The Atlanta Braves got some late inning heroics from Ozzie Albies and Forrest for a win on Monday night, and maybe they should take more from the Tigers. Talking about Mark Canha and Jack Flaherty. We'll look at those trade possibilities and many more on today's Mock Trade Tuesday episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast there as well at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. If you're new and watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. You can also hit the thumbs up button as well, so others can find us here at Locked On Braves. You're listening on the audio version of the podcast. Thank you so much for your support. Make sure you leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to Locked On Braves. Thank you to all my everydayers out there who continue to let me know in the comment section. I do appreciate you. Thanks so much for joining me here live. For all those that I know are going to be coming in here as we go throughout the podcast, the chair at the bandwagon saying good morning to Jake and the chat. Thank you so much for joining me here this morning as we record another win. Braves got a win against the Tigers on Monday, 2-1. We'll briefly touch on that, but it is our Mock Trade Tuesday segment. So we're going to go over some of the mock trades that you sent in to me, some names that I think could be interesting that maybe the Braves could be targeting. So we'll go through all of that on today's episode. But this one is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, let's briefly touch on Monday's 2-1 win. You want to hear more detail on that, you can always go listen to the postcast with me and Grant McCauley, which you can find in your Locked On Braves podcast feed or over on Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. A 2-1 win. Look, Max Fried battled in this one. It's one where didn't have his best stuff. I thought it was a tale of two halves for him and really Reese Olson on the other side. I thought Braves had a chance to get to Reese Olson earlier. He didn't look particularly great, but the Braves couldn't come through. And then once Reese Olson settled in, it was game over. Braves couldn't really touch him. And I thought it was the opposite for Max Fried. I thought he looked really dialed in early on, but that fourth inning hit, and he lost command of a lot of his pitches, particularly that curveball. You know how important of a pitch that is for him. And he just really couldn't get it back after that. And he had to battle to get through 5+ innings. Did give up just the one run, but great job of damage control, great job of Jesse Chavez coming in and getting him out of trouble. I want to talk about the bullpen, though, for just a second. They did a great job. Certainly some questionable decisions in a close ball game to call upon Jesse Chavez. Look, he's been great, so maybe I shouldn't keep saying that about him. He's been fantastic. But then to bring in Daysbel Hernandez in a tie game in the 8th inning, after you just tied it up, when you had Pierce Johnson and Joe Jimenez available, I understand Iglesias is down. You also had Aaron Bummer out there. That was a little bit questionable. Worked out. Daysbel gave up the one-out double to Mark Canha, who we're going to talk more about in a second. But I thought that one was a little bit questionable for Brian Snitker there, bringing in Daysbel. All's well that ends well, and he does get out of it. That slider got him a couple of strikeouts, some bad swings from Tigers hitters, but he gets out of that jam. Jimenez closes the door for the 2-1 win. Forrest Wall. Look, glad to see Forrest Wall get a chance here. I'll just be honest, and it's one game. He looked overmatched. And, he's somebody who's been dealing with a hand injury here as of late. Somebody that doesn't have a lot of big league experience, but he looked overmatched for most of this game. And I thought even in the at-bat where he got the hit, he took some wild swings at some pitches below the zone. But then he did get one up, and he was able to pull it through the hole for the tie, the RBI to tie the game there. So that's great, certainly. And I want to see Forrest Wall, get more opportunities. I hope he continues to get at-bats and starts against right-handed pitching to see what he can do. And I think at this point, why not? And we're going to talk about some names here that the Braves could be looking to trade for to help in the outfield. But why not give Forrest Wall a look here? It can't be any worse than what Adam Duvall's been giving you. It, didn't really get to see a chance at JP Martinez or Ramon Laureano, but I feel like let's see what you got internally first. Let's see what you got in Forrest Wall. And then obviously, you can still be looking now to make some additions in the outfield. But I just think if ever We talked about it early on in the season. What does Forrest Wall have to do to get a chance? Well, I told you then it was going to take several injuries. And unfortunately, that's been the case with Acuna and now Michael Harris. But it has opened up the door for Forrest Wall to finally get his chance. And we'll see if he can make the most of it. Started off pretty good with a go-ahead hit on Monday that ultimately led to the Braves win. I hate to really be getting down on the players who came through in the clutch for the Braves in this one. But with Ozzie, it's just, swing until you hit something. And we know that for years with Ozzie. And more often than not, at the end of the season, I say it all the time, his numbers are going to be there. But again, even in the at-bat where he got the home run, I felt like he was taking some wild swings. But then he finally got a fastball in a good spot, and he did not miss it. That ball was absolutely destroyed to the top of the chop house as he came through with a hit there. So, I mean, that's what Ozzie does. That's his game. We know it at this point. He can swing at some wild pitches. He can chase some pitches way out of the zone, but he's going to catch 25 to 30 home runs a year. And that's just who he is. And he's going to have some very hot and some very cold streaks. That's just Ozzie Albies. And you take it because, again, at the end of the season, he's going to have those numbers there. But great to see him come up with the big home run there to give the Braves the lead. But for the most part in this one, it looked somewhat like the old offense. 9 strikeouts in this one. They had chances early, like I said, against Reese Olson, but couldn't capitalize. Even before the Forrest Wall hit, you had a ball from Adam Duvall, which is as hard as I've been on Adam Duvall. I don't know how he did not get that one out of the yard. I know the wind was blowing in pretty good, but still that ball was absolutely destroyed. Great job by Austin Riley tagging up. But then Sean Murphy can't bring him in from third with 1 out. And that's been a problem for this team all year. Not picking on Sean Murphy here. It's been everybody that struggled with that. So it's great to see Forrest Wall get the 2-out hit there, but still looked a little bit more like the offense that we've seen for the most part over the last 6 to 7 weeks than the offense that we saw over the weekend. But hopefully that was just a 1-game blip there, and they'll kind of get the offense back on track. But over a good win, 2-1 win over a Tigers team, pitcher in Reese Olson that has really good stuff. And like I said, after that second or third inning, I thought he was really dialed in, making some great pitches, pitching in front of a lot of family and friends as he's from the area. So he was a little pumped up for that one as well. But a win. And again, you'll take them with the pitching staff and with the way the offense has been. You're going to have to win some of these 2-1, 3-2 ball games. So nice to see them be able to get that done. I want to get into our mock trades. First one coming from Hayden Harris talking about Jack Flaherty and Mark Canha. And could the Braves just simply tell them to, hey, come on over to the other dugout here? I think both those guys make a lot of sense. We'll discuss that in more detail here next. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event, and you don't have to when you use the Game Time app. I've been telling you about Game Time for a while, and now it's the app that I use whenever I'm looking to go to a sporting event or really any kind of event in your area, whether it be music, comedy, theater, whatever it might be. Check out the Game Time app. You're going to get the best deals there. They have the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. But what I really like about the Game Time app, all-in prices up front. You know what you're paying. When you're searching for those tickets, you don't have to wonder, okay, how much is this going to be inflated when I get to the checkout screen? You know up front what you're going to be paying. And it also shows you the view from your seat, so you know what your view is going to look like. Don't buy tickets at Wrigley or Boston unless you know your view is not going to be obstructed. Know what that view is going to look like before you buy that ticket. And you can see that all within the Game Time app. Again, it's the app that I use. Last several Braves games I've been to, I use the Game Time app. You can get tickets right up to the last seconds, minutes, even after the game has started. You can still get tickets with the Game Time app, sometimes saving up to 60% on last-minute tickets for sports, concert, comedy, and theater in your area. So make sure you download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today at last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trade, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources to help the latest product info help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 2,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. You want to listen to your sports news all day at home while you work or in the office? Make sure you make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day. You can find it on YouTube or in the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. What's coming up for you here on the rest of the week on the podcast? We'll have our MLB draft prep. Hopefully you're enjoying the College World Series like I am. Some really good names there to watch that could be available for the Braves at 24th overall. So we'll discuss that on Wednesday. We'll have our 2 podcasts on Thursday, Around the League podcast, and then we will also have our mailbag episode live on Thursday night. So looking forward to that. Well, let's jump into these mock trades here. And the first one coming from Hayden Harris, who said Jack Flaherty and Mark Canha should be some trade targets for the Braves. Now, I agree. Both these guys are great. Mark Canha is one I've been thinking about for a while, is somebody that I really like. He is 35 years old. He's a right-handed hitter. He's making $11.5 million this year. And again, with all these trades we're going to talk about for the Braves now and leading up to the deadline, we're all kind of assuming that they don't want to go over that third luxury tax threshold. And if that's the case, they really can't take on more than $5 to $7 million without that happening. Now, obviously, you trade, depending on when you trade for Mark Canha, you're not going to pay for the whole $11.5 million. You're going to pay for whatever's left for the rest of the season from that point on. But still, that's going to be a significant amount of money for Mark Canha. Now, he's fine in the outfield, certainly not great. Decent range, but no arm. Doesn't provide a lot of power. Those are some of the negatives for Mark Canha. But why I love him, feels like he's the exact type of hitter the Braves need. A veteran, he puts the ball in play, 90th percentile in chase rate, better than average whiff rate and strikeout percentage. He gets on base, 10.8% walk rate. He's had a .340 on base percentage or higher in the last 8 seasons. And he's maybe a little bit faster than you think as well. Double-digit steals last year, kind of on pace for that again this season. But that's, when I talk about the guys that I'm targeting at the trade deadline for the outfield, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody you can put at the top of the lineup who has good bat-to-ball skills, can get on base and set the other guys up. And, has a little bit of speed, not as much speed as I would want, but, can't be too picky here. And I don't think it costs too much prospect-wise. Now, again, you may have to get the Tigers to eat some of that money, which means you may have to give a little bit better prospect. But Mark Canha on his own, I think, could be a player that really works out for the Braves. Kind of that professional hitter, can get on base, give you a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, and sit at the top of the order. So Mark Canha is a name that I really like. Not perfect by any means, but again, I don't think you can be too picky here with the Braves farm system and them probably not wanting to give up Spencer Schwellenbach, AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, because you want those guys as part of your future of your rotation. You're going to need them. So if you're looking at trying to get some deals done without giving those guys up, I think Mark Canha is one of those players that you can target. Now, Jack Flaherty, on the other hand, I do like him. Would certainly love to have him. 28 years old, right-handed pitcher. He's making $14 million this year. So again, another one that's pretty expensive, but he seems to be having a bit of a resurgence in Detroit. A 3.01 ERA, a 0.95 whip, 77 2/3 innings this year, already 100 strikeouts in 13 starts. You look at his Savant page, everything is in the red except for fastball velocity, and that's not terrible at 93.5 miles per hour. His expected ERA is even lower than his actual ERA, showing you that this year is not just a fluke. A 33.3% strikeout rate, just a 3.7% walk rate. It was over 10% the last 2 years. Now, if you're not familiar with Jack Flaherty, he was an ace coming up with the Cardinals early in his career, kind of had some setbacks with injuries. And the last couple of years, as I just mentioned, he's really struggled with command. It seems like Detroit has maybe found something out mechanically, because pitch-wise, it's really nothing different than what he's done before. He's still really relying on that slider and knuckle curve that have whiff rates over 40% this year. But it's really, he's just cut down on that walk rate significantly. So I would imagine that the Tigers just found some sort of mechanical flaw in his delivery to help him better command his pitches, because that's really the only thing I can see in his profile that's all that different than what he's been doing the last couple of years. Now, both these guys would be perfect fits in my mind. If you could go get them, go get them, because I think, you get a leadoff guy, like I said, who gets on base, and a veteran hitter who can put the ball in play. You get a veteran pitcher who can sit, in the middle of your rotation, or, he's pitching like a top of the rotation guy at times this year. So it just gives you more depth in that rotation. So I would love to have both of these guys, but here's why I think it won't happen or might not happen. Money, first of all, like I said, the Braves just don't have a lot of wiggle room if they are trying to avoid going over that third tax threshold. And again, we don't know that. We're just assuming that that's going to be the case. And if it is the case, then I can't see both of these guys happening, maybe one of them. You'd be buying very high on Jack Flaherty. Like I said, he has really struggled the last couple of years. Maybe the Tigers have figured out something with him, but you would be buying him at an ace level status. And even somebody that's a rental, I would imagine the Tigers are going to be able to get a pretty nice prospect for him. And I would not be willing to give up AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Walter, Spencer Schwellenbach for a rental type player of Jack Flaherty. Even if you were giving up one of those guys for both of these, who are both rental players, I don't think I would be willing to do that. And I think it's a deal that might cost you that. I think the Tigers are going to be able to get that for Jack Flaherty come the trade deadline, where everybody's looking for top end starting pitching. I think they'll be able to get that for even a rental player in Jack Flaherty. If you just focus on Mark Canha, then I think maybe there's something there. And I think that's the bigger need of the two right now. As much as I would love to continue to add to the pitching depth, because you just don't know what might happen in those final 2 months before the postseason, I think the bigger priority at the moment is getting an outfielder and getting somebody who can get on base. And so I think I would prefer Mark Canha right now of these two. And I think he's more doable in a trade. I don't think it's going to cost you as much prospect wise. And maybe you get the Tigers to eat a little bit of that money. So I really like Mark Canha as a trade target for the Braves. I think he's definitely somebody they could be going after. Let me know what you think. Do you like Mark Canha as a trade target? Should the Braves be going after him? What would you be willing to give up for him? Let me know down in the comment section below. I got several other mock trade options that I want to get to, talking about Paul DeJong, Eric Fetty. We'll look at that. Also, Starling Marte and Jesse Winker. We'll discuss those options more here next. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. And right now, baseball's in full swing, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entry. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game while watching your favorite teams and players. It's really that simple. All you got to do is what I'm doing right now, opening up your Prize Picks app, take a look at what they have out there today for Major League Baseball. They got WNBA, they have esports on here, everything that you could possibly want. You can even look at what they have out there for Spencer Schwellenbach today. They have him at 4 pitcher strikeouts. All you got to do is pick more or less on that. And again, you can pick from all your favorite players and teams to help you get in on the action for all the games out there today. And that's all you got to do. Open up, download the Prize Picks, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. All right, jumping back into some of these other mock trades. Sid Brown said Drake Baldwin and Dylan Dodd for Paul DeJong and Eric Fetty. Now, I think that deal is fine. they might want a little bit more for Fetty, who's having a good year. And like I said, once you get closer to the deadline, a lot of pitchers or a lot of teams are going to be really in need of pitching, starting pitching in particular. But I think that could be a solid deal. You might have to up it just a little bit. For Paul DeJong, 30-year-old right-handed bat, he's only making $1.75 million this year with the White Sox. Slashing 240, 289, not great, but a 480 slug, a 115 WRC plus, average range and below average arm strength according to the metrics on Savant. Now, he did have 9 outs above average at shortstop last year, and he had 5 in 2022. So he's been a good defender at shortstop in the past. And I'm not watching every White Sox game. Full disclosure here, I don't know what he's looked like defensively at shortstop this year. Only somebody who's watched the team every day can really answer that for you. But I can't imagine he's been any better than Orlando Arcia defensively. Now, the one thing Paul DeJong has done this year, he has hit the home runs. He's already hit 14 home runs this season. And I get it. People are frustrated with Orlando Arcia. I think Paul DeJong's a lateral move. And I think maybe you've already seen the best of Paul DeJong this year. I mean, 14 home runs already. I'd be surprised if he even hits 14 home runs the rest of the way. Is Paul DeJong going to be a 30 home run hitter this year? I kind of doubt that. And again, I haven't watched him every day, so I can't say with certainty, but it's hard for me to believe that he's been better defensively than Orlando Arcia. So again, I know people are frustrated with Arcia and the lack of production you're getting from him right now. I wouldn't mind DeJong as just some depth, but I don't, and maybe you play the hot hand between him and Orlando Arcia, but I don't see him as a clear upgrade over Orlando Arcia in my mind, projecting him going forward. Like to this point, yeah, maybe he's been a little bit better offensively than Arcia, but going forward, it's just hard for me to believe that DeJong's going to keep up that home run pace that he's on. And honestly, he has to hit those home runs to be a positive offensively. And so I just don't see it as that much of an upgrade. As for Eric Fetty, 31-year-old right-handed pitcher, he's making $7.5 million this year. So a little bit of money there. Pitched in the KBO last year, but this season, a 3.09 ERA, a 1.17 whip, 83 Ks in 87 innings and 15 games started. The metrics indicate that the success is legitimate and that he's a solid mid-rotation starter. It's a high ground ball rate with his sinker, cutter, changeup, and sweeper mix. I like Eric Fetty. I think he would be solid depth to the rotation, certainly. So it just all depends on the price, but I would not mind if the Braves were able to acquire him. The Paul DeJong move, again, I think it's more of a lateral move. I'd rather just stick with Orlando Arcia. But Eric Fetty, I think, could be pretty interesting. But again, a lot of teams are going to want starting pitching, and I think that could drive the price up. Left fielder Vaughn Grissom says, unlikely as it seems, Starling Marte makes sense if the Mets will eat money. Winker is my dream target, though. A few others would be Severino, Margot, Brian De La Cruz in a package with Tim Anderson as a flyer. I want to focus on Starling Marte and Jesse Winker. We talked about both these guys on last week's mailbag episode. I do love Marte, and I always have. I wanted the Braves to go sign him. Last time he was a free agent. But he's getting older. He's making $20.75 million this year and next year. It's hard for me to believe the Braves are going to get the Mets, a division rival, to eat a bunch of Marte's money, not take a significant prospect in return. I just don't think that's going to happen within the division. I would love to have him, and I think, he would bring solid numbers as well. A 330 on base gives you a little power, a little speed. I think he would be a great replacement at the top of the lineup. It's just a lot of money. And even if the Mets would have to eat almost all of that going forward. And really, I don't think you could expect the Braves to give up that much prospect-wise either. So hard for me to see that one getting done. Jesse Winker, I think he makes too much sense. He's only making a couple million this year. He currently has a 378 on-base percentage with 11 steals. So he's getting on base. Even though he's not the fastest player in the world, he's stealing bases. We saw that when we faced him. He's had a 340 on-base or higher in all but one season, and that was last year. And he has 20 home run potential. Not a lot of range in the outfield, but 100th percentile in arm strength. So you stick him out there in left field. So I think Jesse Winker makes a ton of sense. Cost wouldn't be high in terms of prospects or money. He gets on base. At least this year, he's stealing some. and he has a little bit of power. So, yes, I love the Jesse Winker idea as well, and I think he should be a target for the Braves. Wanted to quickly throw out this blockbuster trade idea that Dylan Short, former host of the podcast, threw out there. He said Waldrop plus Richie plus Baldwin plus Lara plus Baez for John Duran and Nick Pivetta. It's a fun one to look at. That is a huge package in my mind to give up. I love J.R. Richie. I love young Carlos Lara. I love Hurston Waldrop. That's a lot to give up. You are getting an outfielder in Duran, I say young. He's 27. I was surprised to see that he was that old, a little bit of a late bloomer, but he is really good. He has top end speed, perhaps a little bit more pop to come, a 190 ISO, great range defensively, but not a very strong arm. Pivetta, big strikeout guy, but he's a rental player. I just feel like that's too much for me to give up, even though I do like both of those guys. And then if you get somebody, and this is a problem when we talk about acquiring outfielders, and these things work themselves out, but you're hoping that Acuna comes back early next year, if not at the beginning of next year. Michael Harris is out there, and you got Jared Kelenic, who's looking pretty good. So while things are banged up in the outfield right now, you still feel like going into next season that you have your 3 outfielders already. So when we're talking about trading for outfielders at the deadline and you're getting outfielders with control, what's the plan going forward then? Is Acuna going to take up spots in the DH next year, and you have a $16 million team option for Ozuna that you got to pick up? Again, I think we have to keep that in mind when we're talking about trading for outfielders. And again, these things work themselves out. You'll find ways to get them in there. Injuries happen. But, if everybody is healthy and back, your outfield is set for next year, assuming that they believe Kelenic is the guy for that long term. All right, let's preview Tuesday's game. You got Casey Mize versus Spencer Schwellenbach. Casey Mize, former #1 overall prospect out of the University of Auburn, War Eagle, 4.43 ERA, 1.46 WHIP in 13 starts, only 43 strikeouts in 65 innings. So not striking out a lot, but also not walking a lot, just a 6.6% walk rate. But he's giving up a ton of hits, especially on his four-seamer that he throws 41% of the time. Rays have struggled with four-seamers this year, but batters are hitting .307 against that pitch. His splitter has a 30% whiff rate, and it's his best offering, but batters have a .400 slugging percentage against it and a .481 expected slug. So it's a pitcher I think the Braves can get to, a pitcher that's still, trying to find his way at the big league level after he's had some injuries. Love Casey Mize. Obviously, as an Auburn fan, I want to see him succeed, but I think this is a chance for the Braves offense to put up a big number. We'll see if they can do it. As for Schwellenbach, more of the same that we saw last time out. I mean, the stuff for him is so good. It has such good movement. It's to me, in my mind, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, it's a better version of Bryce Elder because he has good command, although Elder's command can come and go, but he has good movement on his pitches. I think the difference there is, Schwellenbach, one, throws harder, and I think that gives him more of a higher ceiling, and he has better command, but sometimes too much command. And we've talked about that a lot on here, is making more quality two-strike pitches, trying to get chases, in that gray area right outside the strike zone. That's really the key for Spencer Schwellenbach, but he was great in his last one. Hopefully that will continue on Tuesday, and hopefully the Braves offense can put up big numbers against Casey Mize and that Tigers bullpen that I mentioned had been shaky coming in. We saw it on Monday. The Braves were able to get a home run against old friend Shelby Miller to win that game late. So again, looking for this offense to put up a big number on Tuesday. Some news of the day, as you already know, happened right after I finished recording yesterday's podcast. So that reminds me, to make sure that I check social media before we end here today. But yesterday they recalled Forrest Wall, they optioned JP Martinez, recalled Daisel Hernandez, and placed Hurston Waldrop on the 15-day injured list. He reported some elbow soreness after leaving the game on Sunday. It was then reported after Monday's game that it was elbow inflammation. He'll be shut down for a week and we'll be building back up. So it sounds like best case scenario for Hurston Waldrop, nothing major there, but we'll have to sit out for a week and then kind of ramp things back up. So that's good news there on Hurst and Waldrop, and that's some of the news. Doesn't look like we got any other news right now, so we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Again, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, free 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Brave. Shout out to Kyle TMCN, Mando Vale, Jeffrey Humphreys, Carlos Paulino for joining me here live today as well, and having some good conversation, hopefully respectful conversation in the comments section throughout today. See George Smith, Anthony Saunders made it as well. Bully the Books, Brennan Gandy, Peter D'Amico, thank you so much for joining me here live today. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.